Good evening.
All right. I guess this is sort of an additional housekeeping item, I guess. How many people have actually seen Synonyms? Oh, all right. Yeah, that's better than yeah, all right.
About between half and 2/3.
So we can actually talk about the film a little bit then without spoiling it for the 1/3 that has not seen it yet, who will, I'm sure, be at the screen later tonight. Let's begin maybe with the dedication for the film. The film is dedicated to your mother, who's also edited all your films up to this point. Could we begin by talking a bit about your collaboration and it also struck me that this new film was co-written, I believe, with your father as well, so it's really a family affair. Could you just talk a bit about that?
Okay, it's a good start. It's a pretty. It's gonna be morbid and sad now. So prepare yourself. No, because I don't want to spoil the ambience, but because yes, my mother was a film editor, well-known, notorious film editor in Israel. She edited many films, mostly documentaries, but also fiction. And what I believe, I'm not objective, I'm her son, but what I believe was unique about her is that as an editor, she had no obligation or devotion for the director, even if the director was her son. I mean, she didn't feel that she has to serve the vision of the director. She didn't feel that she has to serve, of course, not the interest of a producer or something like this. This is evident. I think that the only thing that she was concerned with, she didn't care about the script. The only thing she was concerned with was the truth that she felt that she recognized in the materials. And if what's happening sometimes, if the director couldn't, in her opinion, or wasn't aware of or couldn't recognize this truth, so she had to fight against him in order to open his eyes so he'll be able to see what he actually was shooting. Which means that you can imagine the editing process was stormy. But at the same time, it was. I think that film editors should be, first and above all, they should be devoted to the truth. I mean, this is the place where you find what it's all really about. So my mother edited all my movies, feature films, short films, medium-length films, and we were very close. You know, I mean, you can imagine. I mean, editing a movie, it's like spending, I don't know, 5 months, 6 months from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. with a person in a small room, discussing, debating, arguing, and also I always feel that the most intimate thing I have is my shots, the shots that I'm shooting. So you expose to this person the most intimate thing you have, with all the good and the bad takes. Actually, just 2 or 3 days after the beginning of the shooting, Synonyms was shot in Paris. My family, myself as well, but my parents, they live in Israel, and several days after the beginning of the shooting, she found out that she has cancer, lung cancer, uncurable one, and she made this, I think this choice not to tell me about it till I finished the shooting, not to put me in this dilemma, you know. So I found out. My father was waiting for me in the airport when I went back to Israel to edit the movie, and the next day we started editing, and you know, it was like I don't have any other way to say it. It was like a terrible race between what will end before the editing or her life. And she passed away before she ended the editing. The movie already took a certain form, or not a certain form, but she didn't have the time to complete it. It was really, I think, like maybe 4 weeks before she passed away, we had the last rough cut screening. So it was really till the last moments, and it was really, you know, editing under a shadow of death, and editing between the editing room and hospitals. It was terrible. So that's why the movie is dedicated to her. And actually, if we talk already about it, I realized that I made a mistake. I didn't because most of the people, when they see this dedications in English, they don't. It's not clear that she passed away, and then people ask me very often about. So how was the editing? Was it nice? And then you have to face the yeah. And I wrote the script with my father was a co-writer of the script. My father is a writer. And again, there's something, I think there's something interesting about it because for those who watch the movie, for those who's going to watch it, well, the film is based on my own experience, and it's a pretty autobiographical one, and it describes a period in my life where I 1 year after the end of my military service, I felt the obligation, the necessity, the urge to leave Israel, to never come back. I felt as if I'm the only seeing person surrounded by blind people. I felt that Israel is a country with no future, and a few days later I landed in Charles de Gaulle airport, and then this is more or less the beginning point of Synonyms, but it was a period when I wanted to erase all of my past, including all the people I knew. So I stopped being in contact with all the Israelis I knew, including my parents, and in a way, there was something, because most of the scenes in the script took more or less place in reality, and in a way, one could have imagined that working about such a film with your parents would become kind of confession, kind of diary, kind of a way to tell them what was happening in a period. But I think that I really grew up in a family where cinema was as important as life. And I think that when I told you the story about my mother, you could also witness it. I think that it's not a matter of comfort, but the fact that my mother passed her last days on Earth editing was in a way the best, but the only right way that she could finish her life. But so I grew up in a family where cinema was as important as life. So there's never been questions or discussions while writing the script, for instance, based on what really happened. It always happened to Yoav and not to Nadav. It was always like, never, so was it really like this? No, it was always like, so should we do this? But there was also always this artistic distance, or the artistic perspective. It doesn't mean that it wasn't emotional. I think that cinema and filmmaking is extremely emotional thing. It's like just differently emotional than life.
And I'd be curious to hear you sort of elaborate on how the writing process proceeded, because the film has, for those I guess who haven't seen it, it has like a real feeling of spontaneity and freedom to it, sort of almost as if you might just be filming scenes as they sort of occur to you sometimes, but then there's also this autobiographical component which suggests that it's very rigidly scripted, perhaps. So could you just talk a bit about how the writing proceeded?
I think in a way the main advantage that I find in the fact that I base most of my movies on my personal experience and synonym even more than the previous ones is the fact that it helped me to detach myself and to resist to the convention of scriptwriting. I always have this feeling that each person could witness, or if he would have had to describe his life experience, he would use words like strange or chaotic or peculiar or mysterious. And then we watch movies and there's something so organized about them. There's something, and I always feel that that something in the narration softens, and in my opinion also turns this chaotic experience of existence turns it to be something less interesting, much more comprehensible in a way, maybe much more accessible, but maybe also life is charming because it's not accessible. So the fact, in a way, that I also always have this simple argument saying, no, but this is how it happened. This is how it really happened. I think that it helped me to avoid this seduction, this trap of falling to the same narrative conventions, and I always look for in synonyms for a various. I think that the narration in my movie is very primitive. It's primitive in a sense that it's very basic. It's like if you think about synonyms, a guy leaves one country in order to move to another. He thinks it will be kind of salvation, kind of redemption. At the beginning it's great, then it's not so great, then he leaves. There are no turning points. Yes, there are, but we all know this basic construction. Sometimes a person arrives carrying his bag and leaves some months earlier with more or less the same bag. Well, in the film it's not the same bag because the story is bad, but it's but then begins. It's a platform, and then begins the movie, and the movie is everything but this. So the script writing. I mean, I'm always afraid of very good script. You know, there are these scripts that people like read them, and they are. And when someone tells you the script is perfect, I was reading it, laughing, and then crying at the same time. I think that you should leave the script aside, because then I mean, what's left to do? I mean, you know, Pasolini was calling the script writing the uncompleted, the unaccomplished form of art, and I totally agree. I mean, script must, I think, contain empty spaces. It must be imperfect. It must contain questions that are not answered. But you know, that's why, for instance, it always pretty hard for me to finance my movies, because like people, I always facing the same. I'm already used to it, but I'm always facing the same response, that people like they're really enthusiastic. I mean, at least those who love my movies, they're really enthusiastic by the idea that I'm going to make a movie. Yes, send us with the script, we can't wait to read it. And then 2 weeks later, just you get kind of email. I mean, they're still into it, but they're a little bit disappointed. But it's okay. I think I'm trying to say that I think the scripts should be a little bit disappointing. I mean, otherwise, if you jump to the floor and say, hooray, okay, so let's leave it this way. Yeah, but not everyone. I can imagine it's hard for readers to get used to be disappointed and be happy about it. It depends a lot.
And as with your last feature, the kindergarten teacher, language is incredibly important here, and in Synonyms, it seems to me that it kind of. The film is in part about this relationship, I think, between language and cultural identity, and you know, who's included and who's excluded from society and this kind of thing. But then it's also, especially in some of these scenes where Yoav is walking down the street and he's practicing vocabulary, and it almost seems like, you know, he's brushing up against like madness or insanity or something, but from within this, like, the house of language, if you will. So could you just talk a little bit about sort of, you know, what this film maybe says about language, or just what you were thinking about in terms of language, because I think it was like clearly on your mind when you were making the film, because it seems to go in a lot of directions all at once.
Yeah, I first began as a novelist. And I really love words, but I don't like so much stories. So already it put you in a complicated position, because you want to celebrate words without telling too much stories. So and then for me the solution is simpler, and I think there are these conventions mainly about artistic films that they should be half mute with no words, like people, this cliche where people are watching a movie and they say it's unbelievable, and then there's no one single word, and and sometimes it's great. But of course it becomes also a cliche and a convention in a way. You want to sometimes I feel that you have to say the honor of words. Words shouldn't be a cursed thing. But the thing for me, and also there is this distinction sometimes in cinema between films of words and films of actions, films of dialogue. But I think that for me the solution is using, and this is maybe the thing, is using words not only as a functional thing, but also as an essential thing, which means that the importance of words is not only what they mean, what they represent, but what they are. So, and it sounds very theoretical, but I'll try to explain it in a second. I think that when you talk in a foreign language, suddenly it becomes very clear, because there's a thing, in the movie, okay, so this guy stops talking in Hebrew, and he moves and suddenly he's a man without words. He's a man who deliberately gave up his words. So suddenly he's a man without words, so he must find new words, and these new words are words in French. And each word in French is a small triumph, a small victory over his previous identity, over himself. So he celebrates each word in French. Each word in French become a celebration, become a carnival, become a party. And then you judge the words differently, because the question is not only what their meaning, but for instance, what's their music. So for instance, if you think about a word like sordid. So it's pretty terrible word, but it's super fun to say it. So you can say sordid, 24 hours. And he enjoys so much saying it, like he's moving and he's dancing and he's saying it with his body, with his hips, and then words become something different, because words are problematic for cinema when they tell the script. When you say, okay, this is what, we watch some visuals and now we'll find out what's happening. Tell us what's happening, and then the guy is talking. But when words are material, among others, like colors, like locations, like acts, like actions, so suddenly it's totally different. And I think it's the same thing about ideas, because, for instance, I think that it's pretty complicated to understand, to decide or to define if Synonyms is a political or not political film. And I think it's also because of the fact that it contains maybe contradictions, but also because of the fact that there are a lot of moments when people are telling ideas, but these are not the ideas of the movie. These ideas are part of life, part of existence. Like, I don't know, we eat something, we take a shower, we kiss, and we say something that might be an idea. So the idea is just something, on the chain of our life, and then ideas become also a material. They become an existential material. They don't become a message. So the film contains all sorts of political ideas, but these are not the ideas of the film. Or maybe the film doesn't have a clear idea.
Do you think that this is something that perhaps Synonyms shares with the kindergarten teacher, which, there's so much poetry in the film, and there you really feel sort of the weight and the materiality of language itself? Maybe something similar is happening here, but I was curious about that relationship in general, because I feel like these films are connected, but in a way that's not immediately clear.
There is this connection that in both films the main character has the same name. So which is okay. For me it's a kind of playful thing, and also because at the end it's always the same character, so I'm too lazy to invent a new name. So I said okay, but then I remember I've been once in a kind of discussion about my movie, and there was a teacher from university, and she started really to treat this issue very seriously. Like you say, the young you are, they got older and become. Okay, but I wouldn't look at it so literally, but yeah, the films are connected, maybe in the sense that in both films there is an attempt to redeem yourself and to change a certain deterministic curse of history using the power of words. And this is maybe something in common.
And in Synonyms, the vehicle for all this language that we're talking, or a lot of the language that we're talking about, is your leading man. This guy, Tom Mercier, is completely, impossible to take your eyes off of when he's in the film and so on. I'm just wondering, I guess first, just on a sort of practical level, like where'd you find this Israeli guy with a French name to be in your film about being an Israeli guy in Paris and so on, and also just how did the two of you work together, because it's such a crazy magnetic performance.
I mean, I think it's absolutely justified, but people ask me so many questions about Omer Asias. Sometimes I feel like his agent, but I mean he deserves it. When I wrote this script, I naturally imagined a little bit myself in all these scenes because I was there. And then arrived the casting stage. And I remember that at the beginning I was pretty melancholic because I told myself that in a way I should have casted myself for the movie. But first of all, I'm a pretty bad actor. And second of all, this guy who was myself 17, 18 years ago doesn't exist anymore. So it wasn't been an option. And I told myself, okay, whoever I will cast, it will be a little fake, it won't be, till I met Tom Mercier. And he made me forget about myself, which is not easy. And also, I mean, at 1 second I didn't regret anymore any of this, and I think he made me, it's not that made me understand, but I understood again. It's a little bit, like the film is maybe a better version of life, so I feel that Tom Mercier is a better version of myself. And we found him in a regular casting. I mean, like when we analyze, I work always with the same casting director, and when we analyze the roles, so, like, okay, you tell yourself, I need a handsome, charismatic, masculine, Israeli guy between 22 and 24 years old. There's some Israeli guys. I mean, there are pretty much, I think. But then when we started to analyze the role, we understood to which extent I think it's an immense role. I mean, I think, it's so demanding, and the film is written on his soul and his body and his brain and we understood that only there are few actors that are capable of it. And Tom Mercier was back then a student in a theater school, and he's never been on set, I think, before. Someone talked to us about him. We watched the photo. We didn't know him when we arrived to the audition. And there are so many legends about auditions that even when you tell the truth, you feel as if you're exaggerating or lying. But it was really immense. And the thing I remember most from this audition was that, he's an extremely serious guy, like super serious. Like he gets in, he's doing his stuff. He hardly talks to you, like he doesn't ask you how are you or anything like this. He's polite, but he's too concentrated on the thing, and he was doing what he was supposed to do, and he was very good. And then, when we analyzed the character, we told ourselves that he's someone who's always, who has this power of charming other people. There is this thing of fascinate, charming. And then the casting director told him, okay, now charm us. I was like, fuck, it's not easy, sorry. But I mean, I would like someone to tell me, charm me, or fascinate me, or something like that. And he was really super serious, so he was thinking for maybe 3-4 seconds. And there was a curtain there, and he went beyond the curtain, and I don't know why, but he found there like an old kind of puppet or something like this, or of a woman, and suddenly burst in. He started, I don't know how to describe it, fighting, making love, dancing with this puppet, and it was so inventive and so wild and full with imagination, and at the same time so unpredictable, all the things that he's done, and it took like, and it went on and on and on. We couldn't, and when I watched it, I knew that it's him, and we didn't want to make him stop. And I remember that the only thought that I told myself, okay, I hope that the movie will be as good as this audition. And then at a certain moment, okay, we had to stop. So he told him, thanks a lot. And in 1 second, he was again, the serious guy. Thanks a lot. And he went out. And this is, it's like a car who's racing from 0 kilometers per hour to 500 kilometers per hour in a second. And I think that it's also, you can feel it also in the movie, because he's someone who's, he's tender and fragile and polite, but he can't explode in each second. He has this violence inside him. And Tom is exactly like this. He was a judo champion, and everyone predicted that he would bring the Olympic medals, and one day he abandoned the judo and became a dancer. So he's really tender, he's fragile, but he's also full with, he's dangerous. And there's a dangerous thing about him. And this is, and nevertheless, is really, you'll never meet a nicer person. And he's really hard worker. And I don't know, when he fixes a meeting with you in 9 a.m., he will be there in 8:30 to be sure that you won't be late. And he's the nicest person, but he doesn't have any limits. I've never met someone so free in my life. And I remember, when we were in the Berlinale, for instance, so we've done some interviews together, and journalists, they always asked him about it, for those of you who watched the movie, about the nudity scenes and and he was looking at them, and he truly and sincerely didn't understand what they were talking about, because he could have done also the interview naked. And another thing about him is that since his physical capacities, and also intellectual ones, are really unlimited, it's like having Superman on set. You can ask him to fly and do it. 10 takes, 20 takes. You can ask him to, and it's very tempting. There was a moment that I told myself, okay, we should stop, because I just enjoyed of giving him tasks in order to see him fulfilling him. And we ran out of shooting time, so I told myself we should stop. But yeah, okay. You understand why I said that I feel myself
well, on the subject of nudity, the clothes are very important in this film. I think it's kind of a rare thing that the wardrobe is such an expressive part of the mise en scène, and it seems like something that you thought about a lot. And of course, people know. I'm sure anyone who's seen a still from the film or whatever has seen Yoav's yellow coat, but I think it's also the siblings who he takes up with, the way that they're dressed sort of indicates what, like they're like haute bourgeois, like Parisians who are separated by an ocean of an economic ocean from this guy. And also, when you first meet him, well, not only is he naked pretty much when you first meet him, but he has the lip piercing, which he loses almost immediately, and that of course seemed quite deliberate. Could you talk a bit about maybe how you sort of derived the concept for the wardrobe in the film, and sort of what role that played?
So actually there's a debate if it's yellow or mustard, the color of the coat. Yeah, but I don't know, but whatever. But so maybe I begin with the coat. There was a moment when I understood, again, in my head, the movie is a little bit, and from the beginning I felt that the movie is a little bit, in a way, kind of superhero movie, and that this guy, he has this tragedy of superheroes, that he can be superior or inferior, but never be part of, never be really integrated. And I felt that there's something that should distinct him and make him visible, even if he. I remember that when I was talking with my casting director, yeah. So we tried to find out what should he be wearing. So first of all, it was clear for me that he should wear the same thing, like Superman. He should wear the same thing. But second, I told her, let's find something that, like, from the moon, when you look at Earth, you see like the two things. You see the Chinese wall, and you see Thomas here walking. And something that will detach him from his surrounding. So this was one thing, and then the other thing was this idea that he's running away from Israel, from his military past, and then he's exchanging one uniform with more subtle uniform, but his uniform. And the third thing was I loved it because there is this moment that this French couple they save him, and then they enable him to get back to society, or they integrate him in society by giving him whatever he needs. So they give him money and clothes, but at the same time, by giving him this coat, they already also put a certain barrier, because they are all dressed with the colors of people who understand what life is. Sorry now for offending those who are not dressed with, but which I mean on the scale between grey and black. Yeah. It can also be blue sky and white and whatever. But then he is dressed with this clothes of the person that like at the end of the movie, that thinks that he's a hero, but actually is the destruction of others. And then yesterday I met, and this is the last thing that I say about the court, I met, Nadav Lapid, the director, the French director, and he told me like, we were talking about the movie, and he told me like, for me it's the most Jewish or Israeli thing to walk around with a yellow coat shouting, I'm not Israeli, I'm not Israeli. It's the contradiction. So it's nice. I think it's a good analysis. But so this was about the code. And about this piercing, I think that I found it, first of all, always when you have, always I feel that when you have a concept, you should have a bag in your concept, the thing that is not working well. So if the concept was that he's losing everything, so I almost said, but one thing, when they stole his things, one thing should remain, which would be the piercing. But also I like the idea that, I think people see him like this in the first moment of the movie, and they tell themselves, okay, now I'll have to watch throughout the whole movie a guy with this piercing. So you prepare yourself, and then it disappears. So I don't know. I found it amusing.
Maybe I'll ask one final question, and then we'll open it up to the audience. I guess I would be remiss not to ask about the reception of the film in France and in Israel. And maybe what was your experience of that? What did you make of the way the film was received? Outside of the film festival world, and, sort of in the two countries that in a way the film is about.
First of all, I must say that in a surprising or unsurprising way, I feel that the film is received all over the world basically in the same way. It's very dividing. There are few people stay totally indifferent. Few people think that the film is nice. There are those who are furious. There are those who are really, really shaken. But it evokes evokes very powerful reactions, and I think that they are mainly connected with the cinematic form more than the content, or maybe with the mixture of these two things. But we know that at the end, what is provocative is, I feel so in cinema is much more the form than the content. I feel that people who I mean, I'm not supposed to be the spokesman of those who hate my movie, but if I try to do it for a second, so what I feel is that people, I mean, Synonyms, I think it's a film about the vibration. It's a film about movement. It's a film that at least tries to vibrate from the very second, and that this vibration that begins in the first frame of the movie will accompany you throughout the whole film till its very end, till the last frame, till the last scene, till the last second, despite of the fact that the film is oscillating, you say? Oscillating between, I don't know, 20 cinematic styles and between two different cameras, but it's the same movement. And I think that people that are taken and shaken physically and emotionally and intellectually, and all of this, at the end it's the same thing. By this movement, they respond very powerfully to the movie. And those who don't, they feel like a boxer in a box contest that is all the time punched by the movie. They feel that for 2 hours and 3 minutes they only punched all the time, so they become angry. I can imagine. I mean, I like as a spectator to be punched by movies. I think it's a good. I think it's the experience of viewing films. After how the movie was in Israel, it depends. Like, first of all, when the movie won the Golden Bear, so really it was pretty enormous thing. I mean, I didn't know because I was in Berlin in the ceremony, but the three main TV channels, they stopped the programs, and there was a kind of special news. You know, for me, like, it's something that happened when a war starts, not when someone is reading. You know, in the film festival. So in the beginning, and the title was either Israeli Pride or Israeli Hero. So I became an Israeli hero.
So I was going to say, the announcement about you on TV might be like the announcement that a war has begun.
Exactly. So, and when I went back, I remember I went back in the airplane. People were so moved, and I mean, it was touching. I mean, they said, yeah, you have been walking proud in the streets of Berlin, and I told them an Israeli guy won. It was nice, really. And then arriving to the airport, there were dozens of cameras and journalists. There was an improvised conference. It was, and then they started to show on TV scenes from the movie. And you can imagine which scenes they selected. And suddenly people weren't sure anymore if it's like national Israeli pride or Israeli shame, and if it's like a hero or a traitor or whatever. And I started to get all sort of, well, it's not very important, but people started to get angry. But all of this happened before the movie. The movie was released. And then when the movie was released, they asked me to make some talks with the audience. And I remember that for the first meeting with the audience, I asked you, for those of you who watch the movie, you know there is his muscular friend, his big guy, the one who's humming the Israeli hymn. So I asked him to come with me, because I told myself, okay, if it's gonna, yeah, let's see. I mean, you better have this guy on your side. But then, actually, I must say that besides maybe 2 or 3 charged moments, most of the people they really understood the movie on much a broader sense, and they didn't, they wasn't preoccupied or obsessed by pro-Israeli, anti-Israeli. Actually, the only one was, there is in Israel, I don't know if you know, but there is, although the Minister of Culture was not the brightest. Yeah. I mean, she has her qualities, but they are not connected with culture. Not that kind of culture, yeah. And I remember that when there was the premiere, so a guy that I didn't know came to me and he told me, "Hi, I'm the assistant. I'm working with this Minister of Culture, and I came to examine whether the movie is pro or anti-Israeli." So I answered, and it's really sincere. I answered honestly. I told him, "Okay, when you find out, tell me," because really till now I don't know. I mean, if the film is pro or anti-Israeli, then I think you know. But then, as I said, the audience is Israel. I mean, there were people who were against, there were people who were for, but the movie, but the reactions were much beyond the strict political thing, which is I think also logical for such a movie, because